I'm sure many of you are familiar with the names of certain popular foreign clothing brands like these. And chances are that you have already purchased clothes from these foreign brands. These are the brands among many that we find in malls and stores that we visit these days. But where are the Indian brands? These foreign clothing brands are preferred to the indigenous clothing brands. But you will be surprised to know that this was not the case even till 2 centuries ago. That is to say, Indian textiles were very exquisite and they dominated the textile industry in the whole wide world. But how did this shift happen? As in, how did Indian textiles become popular and then fade out of popularity? Well, in this lesson, we will be focusing on the Indian textile industry and how it came into being, how it developed over the centuries, and how it dominated the entire world at one point of time. The East India companies had come as trading companies to the Indian subcontinent in the 17th century during the rule of the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. Now initially they came as trading companies, but they saw the huge resources that the country had in store. And when they came here, they found that the textiles produced here were very exquisite in nature. The designs on them were very beautiful and the quality was also amazing. And following this, the East India companies started trading Indian textiles. Indian textiles were then sent to several parts of the world and Indian textiles were traded by these trading companies. The trading companies also greatly profited from the sale of Indian textiles in several parts of the world. But as it happened over the centuries, Indian textiles slowly started fading out of importance. But as it happened over the centuries, Indian textiles failed to compete the European textiles, and all credit goes to the Industrial Revolution, because following the Industrial Revolution, many technological changes had happened throughout Europe. And because of these technological developments, the Indian textiles were not able to compete with the European produced textiles. By the 1850s, England came to be known as the workshop of the world. Can you imagine how many kinds of goods and textiles and other products were produced in England at that point of time? Over the years, India became the source of raw materials, and these raw materials were carried to England and other European nations for the production of finished products, and these finished products now started flooding the Indian markets. So from this we can understand that there was a transition, a shift in the pattern of the sale of goods. Initially, it were the Indian textile products that were flooding several markets in Europe and Asia. But in the latter half of the 19th century, it were the European goods that started flooding the Indian markets. So this shift is what we will be trying to trace in this lesson. That is to say, we will find out how Indian textiles became important in Europe, as in the role played by the East India companies in promoting the growth of Indian textiles in several parts of the world. In the course of these lessons, we will also learn about several industries like the iron and steel industry, or even the factories in the Indian subcontinent that sprang up during the 19th century. But for now, let us focus on Indian weavers and Indian textiles and how those rose to prominence throughout the world. Indian textiles have been very popular for their exquisite quality and great craftsmanship. Those have been popular in Southeast Asian places like Penang, Java, Sumatra. Those were also very popular in Central Asia and West Asia, and over the centuries, those gained great importance in the markets of faraway Europe. Now let us briefly talk about the history of Indian textiles. The memories of Indian textiles, the memories of exquisite craftsmanship, of exquisite quality have been recorded in several English words. Many English words gained currency simply out of the textiles that were produced in the Indian subcontinent. And as students of history, it is imperative on our part to look at the origins of those words, as in how the names of certain Indian textiles entered the English vocabulary. Let us now begin talking about muslin. Muslin is a very fine material, and muslin textiles have been popular even till a decade or two back. But how has this word muslin entered the English vocabulary? Let us now find that out. The European traders first came across this fine cotton cloth from India in Mosul. Now Mosul is a place that lies in the present day nation of Iraq. Here on the map you can see Iraq, and in Mosul it were the European traders who came across this very fine cotton cloth that was produced in India. And this is how this fine cotton cloth came to be known as muslin. So, all finely woven textiles from this point of time came to be known as muslin. So, can you understand the origin of the word muslin? The European traders, simply because they came across this finely woven cotton cloth in Mosul, started calling this fine cotton cloth as muslin, and this is how we get the word muslin in the English vocabulary. Now we have learned that the East India companies were coming to the Indian subcontinent as trading companies. Now India has been a vast reservoir of many kinds of resources, be that the fine textiles or even the spices. Now when the Portuguese came to India in search of spices, they landed at Calicut, which lies on the Kerala coast. Here on this map you can locate Calicut, and Calicut lies in the present day Indian state of Kerala. Now they had come here in search of spices. Indian spices like cinnamon and cardamom have been very popular in European cuisines simply because of their aroma, which is why the Portuguese traders came to Calicut. And when they came to Calicut in search of spices, they were introduced to the fine cotton textiles that were produced here. Now, cotton textiles are something that India boasts of since ages. India has been producing very fine cotton textiles of different types since many centuries. And when these Portuguese came to Calicut, they also found the amazing and very exquisite cotton textiles here. And they started calling these cotton textiles calico. Henceforth, all cotton textiles were called calico by the Portuguese. And in this regard, we can understand that the name of the place Calicut played an important role in giving birth to the word calico. And the cotton textiles that were taken back by the Portuguese from Calicut to Europe came to be known as calico henceforth. Before proceeding with this lesson, let me ask you a question. By what name was the cotton textile taken back by the Portuguese to Europe known as? Was it known as calico, muslin, chintz or ditto? Well, the correct answer is calico. And the word calico has been derived from the name of the place Calicut, where the Portuguese had first arrived as a trading company. And the word calico has been derived from the name of the place Calicut, where the Portuguese had first arrived in the Indian subcontinent in search of spices. And in this way, we can understand how the names of different Indian textiles were entering not just the English vocabulary, but the vocabularies of several European languages. Now let us focus on this page from an order book of the East India Company in 1730. Here we see a list of different items. Do you know what these were? In the year 1730, around 589,000 pieces of cloth was ordered, which included around 98 varieties of cotton and silk cloths. So can you understand how important Indian cotton textiles were in the European markets? Because the Europeans were actually attracted by the exquisite quality of Indian cotton and silk cloths, which is why around 98 varieties of cotton and silk cloths were ordered, and here we can see a testimony of the same. Among the types of cloths that were ordered here, there were shints, bandana. Now it is imperative on our part to learn about these types of cloths as well. The word shints is an English word. But from where do we get this word shints? It comes from the Hindi word shint. And shint in Hindi means cloth with small and colorful flowery designs. Now shints became very popular in the European markets by the 18th century. The Europeans were very attracted to these colorful flowery designs, as you can see here. And this is how the word shint in Hindi came to be known as shints in English. You'll be surprised to know that shints were so popular in England that rich people, including the Queen herself, wore clothes of such Indian fabric. 18th century shint dresses are here, as you can see. So these small but very colorful and vibrant flowery designs called shints became very popular to the Europeans in the 18th century. I'm sure many of you will be able to identify this kind of Indian fabric. And chances are that you have already worn this in the form of an orni, a dupatta, or even a scarf. But do you know what this kind of fabric is called? And how we have gotten that word? Let us now try to trace the origin of this fabric and how it also gained popularity among the Europeans. This fabric is known as bandana in English. But from where do we get this word bandana? We get this word bandana from the Hindi word bandhna. Bandhna in Hindi means tying. And tying plays a very important role in the processing of this kind of fabric that is known as bandana in English. So let us now learn about how this fabric is made and how it looks. Bandana is a brightly colored cloth that is produced through a method of tying and dyeing. So here the process is one of tying the cloths and then dyeing them in very bright hues, and this is how bandana fabric is obtained. Here we can see a bandana design in early 20th century. Now here you can see a long golden line. Do you know what it is? This is a gold embroidery with which these two pieces of bandana are stitched together. Now bandana is also a very beautiful kind of fabric, and it still continues to dominate Indian markets. And since it is very beautiful and was quite cheaply available, it became quite popular among the Europeans. Now bandana patterns were mostly produced in the Indian states of Rajasthan and Gujarat, as this map of India shows you here. In the present Indian states of Rajasthan and Gujarat, bandana fabric is still produced, and in today's India, this fabric is known as bandhni. This bandhni print still continues to be very popular among the Indian masses. Now we come to another kind of fabric that is known as jamdani. Jamdani is a kind of woven textile. Now how is that made? In jamdani, exquisite and very intricate motifs are woven on a fine piece of cloth, and this is done mostly in colors like grey and black. Oftentimes this weaving is done with cotton as well as gold threads. So here you can see how exquisite a Jamdani weaving is, and this is a Jamdani weaving from early 20th century. Now Jamdani was very popularly being woven in places like Dhaka in Bengal and Lucknow in the United Provinces. Now here you can see these places called Dhaka, which lies in Bangladesh in modern times, and Lucknow, which lies in the present-day Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. And Jamdani was also another popular textile that was imported from the Indian subcontinent to the faraway lands of Europe. From that order book we saw there were mentions of different kinds of textiles. Now Jamdani, shinds or even muslin were some, and then there were other cloths too, and these other cloths were noted by their places of origin, and these were Kasim Bazar, Calcutta, Patna, Odisha. So the cloths or the textiles that were produced in these places were also very popular, which is why they were ordered in huge bulk by the Europeans. Now let us talk about how these Indian textiles made their way to Europe. That was not a time of social media and advanced modes of communication. And during that period of time there were no airplanes to transport one thing from one place to another. So how was this done? Orders had to be placed 2 years prior. So this was the time that was required to produce the orders that were placed by the Europeans. And then these specific cloths were woven as they were demanded, after which they were shipped to Britain. And when these finished products reached London in Britain, these were put up for auction and sold. And these Indian textiles, mind you, were sold for very high prices, much higher than the rates at which they were sold from the Indian subcontinent. So from this we can understand that the East India companies were greatly profiting from the Indian textiles that they were carrying away from the Indian subcontinent to the European nations. And in this way the East India companies were also gaining prosperity. But a point that we need to keep in our minds is that Indian textiles, simply because of their great and amazing quality, because of their cheap price, became very popular in several parts of the world. And it were the European trading companies that made Indian textiles even more popular and famous among the Europeans. In our subsequent lesson, we will learn more about how these Indian textiles were being sold in the European markets and how over time the Indian textiles were faced with certain challenges. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.